I've got a question. Why do so many of the modern American video games all look the same? Recently, I tuned into the Xbox Summer Game Fest showcase on the off chance that it might deliver a few flashy features to catch my eye, and I'll admit I didn't leave dismayed. Between the alluring allure of the Xbox Ally handheld, a flurry of fantastic finds from Japan, and an elegant ensemble of European efforts like a promising new Plague Tale game and a spiritual successor to The Witcher from a studio spun out of CD Projekt Red, there was no shortage of standout surprises. However, on the US produced side of things, what was shown to us seemed to be largely the same. We essentially saw a large selection of titles containing a relentless assault of pink and purple bloom, ironic 1950s style sci-fi signage, and sarcastic nobodies in off-brand streetwear, all shooting their way through levels designed by someone who just discovered Fortnite, synthwave, and a vape bar all on the same afternoon. Take one glance at trailers for The Outer Worlds 2, Grounded 2, High on Life 2, or even bloody Call of Duty Black Ops 7, and you'd be forgiven for thinking that they were part of the same shared universe, one known as Neon Sludge: The Algorithm Strikes Back. Even legacy franchises haven't been spared. Activision's Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4 Remastered jettisoned its late 90s skatepark grime in favour of neon glowing backdrops and lighting schemes that look like they were lifted wholesale from a YouTuber's RGB setup. Which raises the question, what on earth is going on here? Why does it feel like nearly every title churned out of the United States is shackled to the same tired tropes? From pastel-puking neon backdrops to quip-happy protagonists and generic casts who all look like they were styled by the same soulless focus group, why are these tired cliches being treated like commandments, while things tick over relatively normally elsewhere? Let's find out. I am Lady Decade, and if you spend your time thinking really quite deeply about video games, then hit subscribe, because this is why most modern American video games all look the same. Recently on this channel, I uploaded a video breaking down a common misconception, namely that many gripes people have with so-called Western gaming are actually problems rooted in American game development. Companies like Ubisoft actually even emulate this style of algorithm-chasing design to soulless storytelling and endless trend-hopping, leading them to develop the same negative reputation among gamers as the likes of the American EA. Essentially, it's the US that's largely exporting this creative rot, but fortunately that doesn't mean everyone is following suit. In fact, if you want proof that Western developers can still make great games when left to their own devices, then look no further than the French-made Expedition 33, the stunning turn-based RPG and handcrafted masterpiece from a small European studio that absolutely puts the big-budget sludge to shame. Right now you can grab Expedition 33 for 43% off using my link in the description and pinned comment. And if you're still in the mood to treat yourself, there's up to 90% off of thousands of indie games, retro classics and modern hits as well. So happy shopping, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this video. To understand why modern American games now resemble a particularly garish set of kitchen sponges, we need to ask what sameness actually means. This isn't just about colours or camera angles, it's a full spectrum flattening of visual identity, a convergence across design, characterization, lighting and cultural shorthand that's been driven not by creativity but by platforms, data and fear. There are 4 pillars propping up this monoculture, and not a single one of those stands on artistic merit. First, the homogenized cast. American studios appear convinced that diversity means assembling a character roster that looks like a university prospectus, but speaks like a BuzzFeed quiz. Everyone's got a quip, everyone's detached, everyone's hair looks like it was procedurally generated by a machine trained on sports drink adverts. This isn't meaningful inclusion, it's corporate cosplay, market-driven identities wrapped in the illusion of variety, where every personality hits the same cadence of smirk, shrug, and sarcasm. However, everyone has mentioned this a million times before, so let's move on swiftly. Second, the Xbox showcase demonstrated that we are currently living through the colour grading apocalypse. The now ubiquitous trifecta of pink, purple and teal has evolved from a subversive flair to a default setting. These colours once carried creative intent, evoking the stylised rebellion of Far Cry 3, Blood Dragon or early synthwave culture, but today they're marketing assets, thumbnail optimized, A/B tested neon gradients used not to build a world but to grab 3 seconds of engagement on TikTok or Twitch. Third is what we'll call Fortnite core, which is evident throughout. A design language that didn't evolve, it metastasized. Giant gloves, rubbery facial animations, lunchbox fashion. This is what fun now looks like, not because artists chose it, but because it pops up in a sidebar. When your goal is to stand out at 480p while someone scrolls TikTok, you don't design characters, you silhouette them. And finally, there's the rise of 1950s irony as visual filler. Once used masterfully by Fallout to critique post-war paranoia, retrofuturism has now been stripped of its satire and repackaged as set dressing. Atomic Heart throws up Soviet propaganda posters without comment. Hi-Fi Rush uses diesel punk set pieces like a student slapping clip art onto a PowerPoint. Clockwork Revolution bathes its world in steampunk cliches with no clear thematic link. It's not homage, it's vibes over vision. So, what do these 4 trends, i.e. BuzzFeed casts, algorithmic neon, Twitch-tailored fashion and ironic retro wallpaper all have in common? They're not the product of art direction, they're byproducts of platform logic. Designed to optimize impressions, not immersion. Built to look familiar, but not memorable. And when everything's chasing the same template, the only thing that stands out is how desperately it wants all your attention without earning it, which raises another question: where did it all go wrong, and how have American games all ended up looking so similar? To understand how we ended up trapped in this rainbow-coloured visual purgatory, we have to rewind to a simpler time when neon still felt rebellious rather than obligatory. Between 2011 and 2015, a wave of retro-futurist aesthetics swept across pop culture. Nicholas Winding Refn's Drive set the visual tone with his brooding anti-hero, synth-heavy soundtrack and moody neon-lit streets. Far Cry 3, Blood Dragon, as mentioned earlier, dropped soon after, parodying VHS-era pulp. Then came Stranger Things, which distilled every 1980s pop culture reference into one digestible Netflix package, complete with a synthwave score that now feels practically mandatory. Together, these projects created more than a vibe. They set a template, one that was self-aware, nostalgic, and instantly recognizable. And crucially, marketable. Game studios took notice. By 2014, the release of Unreal Engine 4 made moody neon design effortless. Once painstaking lighting decisions were now achievable via drag and drop prefabs and bloom sliders. Volumetric lighting effects and HDR glow, which previously required custom rendering work, have become plug and play. Why handcraft ambience when you could simply colour grade everything cyberpunk and call it a day? This technical shift coincided with a deeper marketing revelation. Colour psychology wasn't just theory, it was conversion science. A/B testing on platforms like YouTube and Steam revealed that neon shades, especially purple, pink and cyan, outperformed neutral tones in thumbnails and promotional materials. These colours looked sharp in dark mode, they lit up a feed and they sold. So what began as a homage started morphing into heuristics. Rules that optimised for attention rather than artistic expression. And then we enter the influencer pipeline. Streamers framed by their RGB setups and washed in synthetic gradients helped cement the look. Instagram filters, LED strip lighting, and even facecam overlays began to blur with the games themselves. Titles like Hi-Fi Rush, Atomic Heart, and Call of Duty's later seasons now feature characters, UI, and worlds that appear tailored for TikTok engagement and Twitch sidebar clarity. When visibility is the goal, electric skies and glowing silhouettes become a default, not a decision. In short, the games stopped being styled to tell stories. They started being engineered to survive algorithmic environments, and what began as a visual reverence for a bygone era became hardwired in development pipelines. Synthwave became saturation, nostalgia became normal. And soon, whether you boot up a shooter, a roguelike, or a retro platformer, the opening splash screen all looks suspiciously familiar. Because it is. If the aesthetic homogenization of modern gaming had a capital city, let's be clear, it wouldn't be Tokyo or Warsaw, it would be Los Angeles. American studios have, more than any others, embraced this neon-soaked sameness, not due to a lack of creativity, but simply because they operate within a structure that systematically filters it out. At the core of this is corporate homogenization. The majority of major American studios operate under sprawling media conglomerates such as Electronic Arts, Activision Blizzard, now under Microsoft, and Warner Brothers. These aren't creative collectives, they're content operations engineered for brand management and investor assurance. Game development under these umbrellas isn't driven by vision, it's driven by risk mitigation. The creative director might sketch dreams in charcoal, but the brand strategist sees only Pantone charts and merchandising cycles. The algorithm craves visual noise, purple swords, ironic robots, and cast members who speak as if they've all got stand-up sets booked on The Late Show. But on top of all of this sameness, we have the Fortnite effect. While it didn't invent the garish aesthetic, Fortnite proved beyond doubt that a game could become an all-ages cultural phenomenon with the right cocktail of meme potential, crossovers, and visual absurdity. Once that revenue model proved itself, major publishers scrambled to adapt. American games are purposefully designed to be clipped, streamed, and modded into promo cycles. Even horror shooters can't resist the lure of a neon sticker pack. And looming over all of this is America's greatest export, clickbait culture. Across games, cinema, and social media, the name of the game is scroll-stopping impact. Loud, bright, and ironic content grabs attention. Subtlety, nuance, and atmosphere are secondary. If a trailer can be screen-grabbed into a thumbnail that screams, "Look at me!" with pink lighting, exaggerated poses, and that now ubiquitous DreamWorks smirk, it's considered a win, and the result, a wave of games that all hit the same checklist. A little Fortnite, a little Netflix trailer, a little influencer aesthetic, and all packaged up for maximum visibility and minimal risk. Aesthetically inbred for performance, not meaning. And like any creature bred in captivity, after a while it just stops looking quite right, and that happens to be most American games right now. While American studios remain trapped in an endless loop of neon gradients, TikTok color grading, and metrics-driven design, not every region has joined the algorithmic arms race. Across Japan and Europe, developers still seem to understand that visual identity is meant to serve the game, not the marketing campaign. Start with Japan, where development remains heavily shaped by auteur figures. Names like Hidetaka Miyazaki of Elden Ring and Tetsuya Nomura of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth still command not only creative respect, but also the power to enforce coherent vision across entire teams. Even more stylized titles like Splatoon 3 or Persona 5 Royal use colour not as a trap to snare the algorithm, but as a tool to deepen the tone. In Persona, neon isn't filler, it's thematic punctuation, giving emotional charge to every cut-in and dungeon crawl. These games don't look the way they do because purple performs well in thumbnails, they look that way because someone cared about how it felt to inhabit that world. Because of this, Japanese studios aren't afraid of colour, exaggeration or spectacle, but they apply them with intention, not because a marketing deck told them to, but because the tone demanded it. Their art is rooted in story, mood and personality, not what pops under ring lights on Twitch. Then we have Europe. While the region lacks Japan's auteur-centric model, it benefits from something arguably more important: freedom from commercial conformity. Thanks to public arts programs like Creative Europe and national grants from countries like France, Germany and Sweden, studios across the continent can take risks that would terrify a Californian pitch meeting. That's how we get games like A Plague Tale: Requiem, Disco Elysium and Pentiment, all visually distinct, all tonally confident, and none of them beholden to Fortnite's fashion calendar. This is because when games like Expedition 33 are released, they draw on real-world architecture, folk history and personal experiences. Their visual language reflects the cultures they come from: bleak and philosophical in Poland, romantic and theatrical in France, surreal and hand-painted in Belgium. Even the lighting in these games dares to be naturalistic. There are shadows, there is quiet, there's emotional sincerity unfiltered by algorithmic irony. Essentially, nothing about them is American. So yes, not every studio is bathing its characters in magenta just because the algorithm told them to. In Japan and much of Europe, developers continue to build worlds, imaginative, distinct and often beautiful ones. Meanwhile, America, for all its budget and bombast, seems content to just build thumbnails. But before I get too comfortable throwing stones across the Atlantic, let's talk about the few British games that did appear in the Xbox showcase, because quite frankly, I wasn't exactly blown away by what we offered either. Given our proud gaming heritage from Elite and the ZX Spectrum, the heyday of bedroom coders to Donkey Kong Country, GoldenEye and GTA, you might hope that Britain would have resisted the visual collapse, but instead of standing firm against the rising tide of neon sludge, we've belly flopped into it with Union Jack face paint on. Far from being a holdout of originality, the modern UK games industry has become a full-time franchise outlet, a creative satellite where local ideas are flattened, de-weirded and shipped out with a Californian accent. It starts inevitably with ownership. Britain's most recognisable studios are no longer British in any meaningful sense. Rare is owned by Microsoft, Rockstar North answers to Take-Two, Codemasters bought by EA, Ninja Theory and Playground Games both are under Microsoft, Rocksteady, that's Warner Brothers. In each case, decisions about tone, cast and colour palette aren't being made in Guildford or Leamington Spa. They're being approved in California, somewhere between a quarterly earnings call and an MCU marketing tie-in. Take Sea of Thieves and There's No Ghost at the Grand, for example. Both British-made, both present in the Xbox showcase, and yet, stylistically, they're practically indistinguishable from the very American titles I've just been criticising. Same exaggerated animations, same overlit pastel colour grading, same vague Fortnite meets Vice City aesthetic, and it's like they've swallowed the same marketing handbook as everyone else. For all our legacy of weird, whimsical and deeply characterful games, these felt like they were made to fit into someone else's trend forecast and not to stand out on their own. Rare was a studio that once helped define British eccentricity in the gaming industry, and now they deliver algorithmically compliant outputs for an international market that expects Fortnite polish and Netflix snark. Nothing illustrates this collapse of British game design more perfectly than Hyenas, the £70 million catastrophe developed by Creative Assembly. Once known for the artistry of Total War, Creative Assembly pivoted hard into the multiplayer extraction shooter genre with all the subtlety of a clown cannon. Hyenas featured twitchy physics, airless sarcasm and an aesthetic made entirely of repurposed vape shop signage. It looked like Borderlands had a nervous breakdown on TikTok. The game was cancelled before it even left closed testing. Yep, it was Sega's most expensive game to date, and the Concorde before Concorde reduced to a PowerPoint footnote. We had bedroom coders, but now we make asset packs for California. At this point, you might reasonably ask, if everyone can see how derivative and soulless all of this looks, why do developers continue to do it? Well, the answer, depressingly, is simple. Because it works. Neon still performs, purple still pops, gradient skies still grab attention. These aren't just aesthetic preferences, they're optimization tactics. A well-placed splash of magenta in a thumbnail can boost click-through rates by double digits. On Steam, YouTube or the Xbox dashboard, saturated colour palettes consistently outperform subtler alternatives. Visibility, not visual identity, is the currency of modern game marketing, and in a world of infinite scroll and minimal attention spans, the loudest colours win, regardless of whether they actually suit the game. Today, art direction gets routed through so many layers of approval: creative directors, brand managers, user research teams, publishing partners, that by the time it emerges is often a Frankenstein's monster built from the safest, most generic parts. No one wants to be the outlier who championed a subdued colour scheme if the trailer flops, but everyone's happy to copy Cyberpunk 2077's colour grading and call it inspiration. And this isn't about laziness, it's about fear. The cost of AAA development is so high now that creative risks aren't just discouraged, they're seen as liabilities. It's easier, safer and more career-friendly to imitate what's already been proven to sell, even if that means resigning your game to the same visual graveyard as every other neon-drenched action platformer. But arguably, the publishers aren't the only ones to blame for this. To make matters worse, the audience itself has undergone a change. Games aren't just made for players anymore. They're made for viewers, for streamers, TikTokers, YouTubers, and algorithmic platforms that prioritise clarity over subtlety. This is not art direction, it's packaging, and it's not designed to move you, just to move units. So, with all that said, let's circle back to the question we began with. Why do so many American games all look the same? Why do so many game trailers feel like deja vu in 4K? Washed in neon, bloated with smug one-liners, starring another lineup of ironically detestable mascots trudging through a pastel apocalypse? The answer is as bleak as it is obvious. Because the people making them trust the algorithm more than their own vision. Don't forget that right now you can grab Expedition 33 for 43% off using my affiliate link in the description and pinned comment. And if you're still in the mood to treat yourself, there's up to 90% off of thousands of indie gems, retro classics and modern hits as well. Or, if you really love what I do, access my behind-the-scenes cosplay library and more by becoming a backer over on Patreon. Happy shopping, and I'll see you all in the next video.